and new heavyweight champion of the world.
A couple of years ago, Anthony Joshua was on a 2-fight losing streak and thought his career was over. Now he has secured 4 victories and earned another title shot. However, reaching the top is not the same as staying there. In the fight for the IBF belt, Joshua will face a young and motivated Briton, Daniel Dubois, who could end his ambitions for good.
AJ, and you look at him and you look at both their last 2 fights, the last 2 fights, which they both look brilliant in their last 2 fights. Daniel fought the better quality opposition. He fought the better fighters, no doubt about that. He fought the guy who was the mandatory that nobody wanted to box. He took him on and done the job on it.
You know, without saying too many foolish words about AJ and all that, I want to put him to sleep. And, you know, he's been a king for a long time, but I need to slay the king.
Tactical flexibility. The main problem with heavyweight boxers is their straightforwardness and monotony. I'll move forward, try to close the distance and take your head off. If I fail, you'll take mine. This is often the plan for every heavyweight boxer. This is why inventive, unconventional guys like Alexander Usyk or Tyson Fury are at the top of the food chain and have faced real challenges only against each other. What can be said about Joshua and Dubois? AJ has always been a fairly straightforward and predictable guy. However, unlike most, he possesses incredible speed, technique and high accuracy. As for Daniel, he is a bit more sophisticated. For Dynamite, it doesn't matter much whether he moves forward or is being pressured. His behavior can change depending on the opponent, the situation in the fight and his stamina level. For example, in the bout against Usyk, Dubois stood in the center of the ring and rarely moved forward, but also didn't let the champion take too much space. In the next fight, Daniel faced Jarrell Miller and mostly worked on the back foot, as meeting this tank head-on would have been too reckless. In his most recent fight, Dubois shared the ring with Filip Hrgović and initially worked as the second number, eating a lot of straight punches, but then moved forward and knocked out the Croatian in the 8th round. Of course, the ability to act in different styles is not something trivial, and Daniel still has a long way to go to reach Usyk or Fury's level. However, the same Joshua never works as the second number at all. If something goes wrong, Anthony can panic and break down, while Daniel will look for solutions, adapt and adjust during the fight. Yes, Dubois has issues with confidence that have let him down at the most inopportune moments twice, but in recent fights, he has proven himself and shown that he can be much tougher than we think. Joshua's overconfidence. For a top-level boxer, there's nothing worse than underestimating the opponent. How many times have we seen the strongest athlete lose simply because they considered themselves invincible and thought their opponent wasn't good enough? Dozens, maybe hundreds of times? Once, Joshua already made this elementary mistake when he went up against Andy Ruiz. No one believed in the victory of the funny and clumsy Mexican heavyweight, yet he pulled off the upset of the year. That day, Anthony first tasted defeat and never looked past his opponent again. But it seems the day has come when the Briton has once again forgotten this simple rule. AJ tries to shut Dubois up, threatens him and demands respect. But what kind of respect from Dubois can we talk about if Joshua himself doesn't give any? The former champion feels superior and almost outright says, "You are nothing and will do everything as I say." On one hand, this behavior is understandable. Joshua has been at the top for a very long time, went through many wars and faced the best heavyweight boxers of his generation. On the other hand, Dubois is not a novice to be underestimated without consequence. He is an experienced, trained and dangerous boxer who can do much more of any of Joshua's recent opponents. If Anthony continues to see Daniel as a small fry not worth attention and full effort, he risks being knocked out faster than he realizes his mistake. Work with the lead hand. Many boxers have a punch they rely on more than others. In Joshua's case, it's his developed and extremely dangerous straight right. The Briton has been knocking out opponents with his right straight since the early days of his professional career, and nothing changed when he got to the championship level. The straight right remains the deadliest weapon in AJ's arsenal. At the same time, Dubois doesn't have such a punch. Yes, Daniel hits hard with the same straight or hook and often finishes fights with them, but I wouldn't say it's his bread and butter. The main tool of Dynamite, in my opinion, is his left hand. It sounds quite ordinary, another boxer who works well with the jab, as if this never happened before. But however banal it may sound, Dubois' left hand is a big problem, and even the champion Alexander Usyk felt its unpleasant effect. Daniel skillfully uses the jab, doing so both as the first number and on the back foot. Because the Briton's lead hand is often slightly lower than his head, the punch becomes unpredictable and very dangerous. Besides the jab, Dubois throws very good left hooks. This punch is especially effective to the head at close range, and Hrgović can attest to that. Another function of Dubois' left hand is controlling the distance. Against a boxing genius like Usyk, this trick may not work, but simpler guys often can't reach Daniel's head simply because of his extended lead hand. I think in the fight against Joshua, Dubois' left hand will also be effective. However, it won't be as easy to use as usual. AJ is slightly taller, which isn't too important, but his reach is significantly longer, which is a problem. To fully utilize his lead hand, Daniel will need to move a lot, change angles, and avoid staying in a straight line where Anthony has the advantage. I believe Daniel's team understands this as well as I do and will be fully prepared. Knockout power. Every boxer in the heavyweight division has power in their hands, inevitably for guys averaging around 250 pounds. The difference is whether the athlete can deliver that punch. Dubois is one of those who do it regularly. Out of 21 professional victories, 20 were by knockout, which is impressive considering his opposition. If Dynamite fought only against journeymen or near-top opponents, his record wouldn't be anything special, but his track record is much better. In his last 2 fights, he's somehow knocked out guys who had never lost before, possibly knocked out the undisputed champion Alexander Usyk, and over his career, gave 11 opponents their first knockout loss. This achievement seems incredibly cool to me and shows that Dubois has power that everyone, including Joshua, should fear. I wouldn't call Anthony a chinny boxer, and he's not granite either. The first bell rang in the fight against Klitschko, but AJ managed to come back and people somehow forgot that he was knocked down. In 2019, he was severely beaten and knocked out by Andy Ruiz, and 2 years later, Usyk, who is not known for his power, nearly stopped him. Over a long boxing career, it's not too many mistakes, but we must understand that damage accumulates. Sooner or later, the chin will break down and fail. At that moment, Joshua will fall again, but this time he won't get up quickly. I think Dubois has everything for that to happen now. Daniel is young, fast, and can deliver punches even when exhausted. I think for a while, Joshua would take the punches calmly and not lose composure, but one unseeable punch and it's all over. AJ's fans will be heading to the hospital with a heart attack. Youth. Age is one of those factors that many often underestimate. Of course, each year of a professional career brings more experience and skills sharpen and reach a new level. At the same time, injuries accumulate, damage from constant head punches builds up, and motivation fades sooner or later. At first glance, all this doesn't apply to Anthony Joshua, who is only 34. For a heavyweight boxer, that's practically youth, and AJ's best years are still ahead, but I think otherwise. On paper, the former champion is still incredibly young and full of energy, but in reality, he's already a veteran who has been in this game for a long time. The Briton started boxing in 2007, competed in the Olympics in 2012, and began his professional career a year later. And that's not even mentioning that since 2017, he has been fighting exclusively top 10 opposition, which adds even more strain on the body due to the complexity and intensity of training. At the same time, Daniel Dubois is only 26, 7 of which he has been a pro, and he only approached elite opposition a couple of years ago. Certainly, Dynamite doesn't have as many great scalps as Anthony, but calling him green or untested is definitely wrong. So Joshua doesn't have a significant experience advantage. It's also worth noting an interesting fact. AJ has never won against a top-level opponent younger than himself. This is easy to see by looking at the age of all his opponents since Vladimir Klitschko, Carlos Takam, Alexander Povetkin, Kubrat Pulev, Alexander Usyk and Robert Helenius were older, while Andy Ruiz, Joseph Parker and Otto Wallin were about the same age. The only truly young opponent Joshua has faced all this time was 30-year-old Jermaine Franklin, but he can hardly be considered elite in the heavyweight division. This means that Dubois will be the first top-level opponent in Anthony's career who is much younger than him. Perhaps this is just a funny coincidence and won't affect the course of the fight, but it could also be that we will witness yet another inevitable generational change.
If you want to go now, let's go.
Relax. Don't disrespect.
No, you can't intimidate me.
Don't disrespect.
You can't intimidate me.
Don't disrespect.
You can't intimidate me.
Daniel, don't disrespect me, can't No, don't disrespect me on my life.
This seemingly predictable British derby is actually much more interesting than it seems. Joshua has his key to victory, and at first glance, he seems to have more than Dubois. Size, speed, defense, all on the side of the former champion. However, Daniel has his answers. His knockout power, resilience and youth could play a decisive role and give the prospect the most important victory of his career. It will be tough and the odds are not in Dynamite's favor, but at this high level, it can't be otherwise. What do you think about this fight? Who has a better chance of winning? Be sure to share your opinion in the comments.